I'm Mark Ramsey. I am so thrilled to talk today to Ishita Gupta. Ishita is the founder of a terrific site called fear.less, fearlessstories.com. And it's the intention of the site, as I understand it, Ishita, is to kind of gather stories of people overcoming fear to serve as kind of encouragement and I guess incitement in a sense to others who might also be undergoing some fear. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Fear, excuse me, or challenges. It's sort of the culmination of inspired stories about overcoming challenges, about overcoming fear, the gray area in life that we're not quite as apt to talk about as we are our successes. So it's talking to successful people in business, in entrepreneurship, in writing and creativity, all about how they've gotten to where they are today.
Now, Ishita is the founder of fearlessstories.com, and she's also head of Hoopla and Media, as if those are two different things, for the
whatever that means.
for the Domino Project, which is the publishing initiative of Amazon.com and Seth Godin. So you get to work with Seth Godin. All I can tell you is make that guy eat something. He's got to put on some weight. It's really too thin. Fearless Stories, Ishita, why did you go down this path? This is your initiative. This is your thing. I mean, what was it that made you feel this was important?
Well, I like to distill my experiences in life, and sort of, I feel like there's always importance in our own stories. So I was actually going through a particularly challenging time in my own life and was looking for inspiration, was looking for things online, for examples, and I wasn't quite finding what I wanted to read, what I was looking for. And so the seed had always been planted, I like to say, before, a few years back, but I never quite understood, and who really does, how to start something from nothing. So how to start a magazine, I certainly had no idea. And so what I did was, my background was digital storytelling. I had studied photography, I had studied a little bit of documentary film, and I found myself very interested in how other people were doing things. So taking that sort of idea of how I learn, which is from other people, and I learn best from very specific advice that, you know, people have taken in their own lives and have made them better, or, you know, very specific examples of what people have done, not from this kind of general mass advice. So I thought, how can I take that and sort of make that a principle, a philosophy that I live by, and how can I give myself the resource that I want? And so I started interviewing people. I started talking to them about their own fears, about their own challenges, about really specific situations, whether that be someone who survived the Rwandan genocide and has this real primal fear of survival, or an entrepreneur who struggles with like the daily uncertainty of what their next task is going to be. So I started interviewing people, and I started gathering this really great content that I thought, listen, I would want to read something that has no fluff, no platitudes, is all about actually what people are really doing, and can set an example for myself. So I actually started a 6-month program with Seth, whom you mentioned earlier, and I had a business partner at the time whose name was Clay Hebert. And we started, in that 6-month program, we started the magazine together. So that's a little bit of the background of how I started the magazine and the storytelling aspect of it.
From the perspective of an entrepreneur or a business person, give me an illustration of what you would say is one of the most potent, most empowering, most influential stories that you've told that's had a particular impact on you.
The entrepreneurs in our issues, I mean, they take the cake for me, because here you have people dealing with uncertainty, people like Derek Sivers, who started CD Baby. I don't know if everyone knows about that, but he was just doing it as a sort of hobby, and he ended up changing the whole music industry, and all the ups and downs that an entrepreneur goes through every day, and how one deals with that. He was particularly helpful, down to someone who's just starting out. You know, it's not just that we interview people who are at the top of their game, it's people who are really starting out, and who are right there doing it in that present moment, and that takes on a different kind of fear. You can really relate to that, I feel, if you yourself are starting out, which I always think of myself as still learning, still always trying to grow and always learning. So I always consider myself a beginner, so that was particularly helpful as well.
Every day is another day of starting out, right?
Every day is another day of starting out. It kind of goes back to the Buddhist philosophy of, starting fresh and being kind to yourself, and just realizing that every day you have a new chance to start over, which is always helpful.
So many of the stories that you tell are built around people who are following their passions, and so many of the fears arise in the pursuit of those passions. And what is it about following your passion which makes people so fearful?
I think it's because when you stop seeing your dream as this little thing that's maybe sitting on your shoulders in your head, and becomes a reality, that you're directly confronted with this sort of, oh shit, ooh, I don't know if I can cuss, I don't know if I can do this, type of reality. It really forces you to confront all of your insecurities, all of your limitations. And as an entrepreneur, you have to recognize that. You have to recognize both your strength and your limitations. But I really feel like stepping into your own power is something that's easy to say and it's easy to feel once you have a little bit of momentum. When you first start out, I was totally terrified, and I still am almost every day. It's a terrifying thing to think, I have this big, amazing dream. I'm not quite sure if I can achieve it. And how? How does one do that? I think delineating the steps of sort of breaking it down into smaller steps and getting small wins that lead to bigger wins and really setting reasonable metrics for yourself makes it more doable. But if you have this amazing dream that you want to achieve, it's probably the scariest thing, I think, in my life, is to have that there and know that you can fulfill your potential, but how to do that. So that's where I think a lot of entrepreneurs are coming from when they say pursuing their passions. It also means that you're giving up, a lot of security. You're going from a picture frame with everything laid out, with a clear picture of what you're doing with a paycheck, an income, all these secure things, to an empty picture frame where there's so much potential, but it's still empty. And that's a terrifying thing. So
a lot of the people who will be watching this conversation are people who work in and around broadcasting. They're people generally who aren't necessarily entrepreneurs. They're people who are maybe intrapreneurs. They're people who work for other people, work for broadcasters, work for broadcasting companies, work on behalf of audiences, and so on. And in that industry, like all media industries, is going through this incredibly traumatic change where people are forced to innovate, forced to take chances, forced to try new things. Yet very often still they're not rewarded for that. You're not rewarded for taking a risk, especially if that risk is a high risk. Any thoughts based on the stories that you've gathered, the people that you've talked to, how people in this situation can take courage, can persevere, and follow their visions in these situations where they're really not rewarded for taking risks?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think firstly it's important that you don't think about it as needing a reward for it. I really truly believe that when you're doing something that takes courage, when you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, and maybe even in an organization that's tough to do things, tough to innovate, I think you should force yourself anyway to do that, because no matter what, you grow as a person. There's never a mistake made when you push yourself. You can make mistakes externally and they can manifest as, bad results or just mistakes. But I feel like whenever you do that, whenever you take even one small step to innovate or push yourself or do something different, you shouldn't expect a reward. The reward is intrinsic, and you will, no matter how you see it pay off now or later, it will pay off. Secondly, I know that these things aren't very often rewarded, and so I would say to keep that in mind of your intention for why you're doing it. Seth wrote a book called Linchpin, which is about taking initiative and being the best person that you can be. And I think we're in our society, we're trained to think about this action reward. And while I do think that people who stand up and do that absolutely should be called out and used as examples and who are leaders, that's not always the case. And so I do recognize that. I think for people who want to do that intrinsically, you totally should. And do it for yourself. And I think other people around you will start to see, maybe not right away, will start to sort of observe that change. And then they will understand, and then they will sort of see this new perspective of where you're coming from, and then the rewards may come. Also, it's not easy. I like the phrase, when you live life the hard way, things become easy, or life becomes easy. And when you live life the easy way, life is hard. So when you're doing things that are constantly pushing yourself and might be a little uncomfortable and might be against the status quo, even within your organization, it's not going to be easy right away. But ultimately, people will join you. People will start to see your different perspective. But if you always revert back to doing what everyone else is doing, it's just things are going to stay the same. I always like to think that rewards and the great things in life, the barriers are never you failing, but it's you not doing anything. So remaining the same is actually a bigger barrier than to actually doing something and failing. So within organizations, I know I work as an entrepreneur, so I haven't had much experience with an organization, but working with Seth and sort of being in this publishing industry in the last few years, I've noticed that rewards don't come right away. I know it takes at least a good amount of pushing and persistence and sort of not being afraid to go that route alone, because quite often you are alone if you're supporting a different viewpoint. That to me is the hallmark of a person who's willing to challenge the status quo. It's that knowing that it's not going to happen right away. Whatever it is that you want to push out the door, change a paradigm, help someone else understand a different perspective. It's that it's going to happen after people say you're crazy, after people, laugh, after people, there's that great quote from Gandhi, first they laugh at you, then they listen to you. Can't believe I'm butchering Gandhi right now, but, it is that understanding that it's going to take some persistence. So persist, do it. There's really no sort of downside to doing that, except you fall flat on your face and people laugh at you, and that will happen inevitably in life. So
that happens anyway.
Anyway, yes.
So you say you've talked to more than 100 people for Fearless. What is the most profound lesson you've learned from this journey of yours on Fearless?
I think it's really this idea of knowing that fear doesn't go away. It's really that you're in a rock and a hard place. It's never going to go away, but here you have these big dreams and goals and things that you want to achieve. How does one bridge that gap? To me, it's that the fear doesn't go away, and yet you still keep sort of moving towards it every day. You confront it and you say to it, you're here, I know you're here, you're going to overtake me for a little while, but in all honesty, there's bigger things that I need to do in life, and so I'm going to think about you for 10 minutes and then kind of move on. That to me is a really helpful way of acknowledging and at the same time saying, sorry, it's just not, I'm not going to allow it to totally paralyze me. I know I have things to do. So that has been so helpful for me. And that's honestly what every contributor sort of goes back to. While they all have different experiences and goals and industries, they all come from different places. That is one of the sticking points, is that they all just kind of keep going back, and they all meet it every day. It's never that it goes away. So,
Ishita Gupta is the head of Hoopla and media at the Domino Project, which is the publishing venture between Seth Godin and Amazon.com. And she is also the founder and head poobah of Fearless, the online publication, available at fearlessstories.com. Ishita, thanks for everything you do, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much. I had a good time.